It's a cold winter night in New Hampshire. A car has slid off the road. Nothing too serious. The car is just a little damaged. Hazard lights are blinking, and there's a young woman standing next to the car. She seems a little shaken, but looks uninjured. But when the police arrive minutes later, the woman has vanished. No trace of where she may have gone, and no other sightings of her since that very night. She left behind her car, clues leading to nowhere, and more than 20 years later, the question of what happened hasn't changed. This is the case of Maura Murray. Welcome to A Little Bit Cursed. This is a spooky podcast where we talk about all things true crime to urban legends. If it's a little bit unsettling, you'll find it here. Today, we're talking about the disappearance of Maura Murray, a young nursing student with a bright future ahead of her, only to disappear before she could live it. This is a story that could be your friend, your sibling, or even you. We still don't have answers. There's almost no evidence about what could have happened. We are still questioning everything, and we are still left asking, what happened to Maura Murray? So without further ado, let's get into it. I would like to start by talking about Maura's early life, and a little bit about how people described her. Maura Murray was born on May 4th, 1982 in Brockton, Massachusetts. She is the fourth of 5 children of Frederick and Lori Murray. Her family says that she excelled both academically and athletically, and that she was also very active within her own community. While she tried almost every sport, she especially excelled in running. She broke many school records, and she was selected as Boston Globe All-Scholastic in cross country. She graduated from Whitman-Hanson Regional High School, and she briefly attended the United States Military Academy at West Point, following her sister, then decided in her second year that she was going to transfer to the University of Massachusetts in Amherst to study nursing. The way her family talks about her, they truly loved her, and I'll just get into it now. They are continuing to look for her to this day, and she was just so loved, and it's just so sad what happened. So now I'm going to jump into what actually happened the night that everything went down. On Monday, February 9th, 2004, Maura Murray drove through the slippery snow in New Hampshire, 2.5 hours from where she had been studying nursing at the University of Massachusetts. The snowy conditions caused her car to get stuck around 7:30 p.m. And when police arrived at the crash site, 21-year-old Maura was nowhere to be found and is still missing to this day. That is a very brief description of what happened. All of this is basically in the police report, but now we're going to get into what she was doing on the morning of her disappearance. I apologize, I'm kind of jumping all over the place. I promise it will all make sense in the end. On the morning of her disappearance, Maura made a few decisions that were a bit out of the ordinary. She contacted her professors, telling them there was a death in the family, excusing herself for the rest of the week. She then packed a bag with enough in it to be away for a few days. Her next move was the last time she'd be seen on surveillance. It was at 3:15 p.m. She pulled nearly all the money that was in her bank account, around $280. Taking the money from the ATM, she then went to the liquor store and purchased about $40 worth of alcohol. Authorities believe that following this chain of events, she had fully departed the university around 4:30 p.m., heading towards New Hampshire. She did this alone, not telling a single soul about her plans. So at this point, it seems like she's going away for a little bit, and she hasn't told anybody her plans of what she's doing. I actually didn't include this in my notes, but I'll add it here now. She did contact her boyfriend and said that they would talk later, so she never told him anything either. So now I'm going to discuss what happened prior to the crash and a few months prior. 3 months before Maura's disappearance, she started exhibiting some unexpected behavior. While she was known as a good and disciplined student, she admitted that she had stolen a used credit card to buy food from different restaurants. This definitely does seem to be out of character from what I have researched on her. She seemed to be a star student. She really excelled academically and athletically, and she was a very disciplined girl. But I also need to note, I don't know what's going on in her head. Nobody knows what's going on in her head, and unfortunately, only Maura knows. Jumping forward to a few days before her disappearance, on February 5th, just a few days before her disappearance, while she was at her security job, she was reportedly on the phone with her sister discussing relationship problems. Later in her shift, her supervisor reported that she actually broke down and later walked her back to her dorm around 1:20 a.m. She had asked Maura what was wrong, and the only thing she said was, "My sister." Details about that phone call would not be revealed until her sister Kathleen spoke about it in 2017, over a decade after her disappearance. Kathleen explained she had been discharged from rehab that evening, and on her way home, her fiancé took her to the liquor store, which caused a relapse. Full transparency here, I don't blame Kathleen for not explaining this phone call sooner, and I honestly wouldn't have blamed her if she decided not to share at all. And I think she's an incredibly strong woman for sharing anything. She didn't owe an explanation to anyone, if I'm being completely honest. I understand that the public is definitely curious, but this phone call doesn't really have anything to do with her disappearance. Maybe it's adding a little bit of stress to her life, but she can't be blamed at all for the disappearance of her. On February 7th, just 2 days before her disappearance, she went car shopping with her father. Later that night, she dropped her dad off at his motel and went to her campus to attend a college party around 10:30 p.m. At 3:30 a.m., en route back to her dad's hotel, she actually crashed his car and caused damage of around $10,000. The following morning, her father learned that the damage would be covered by auto insurance, so he dropped his daughter off at campus with a rental car and reminded her to get some accident forms that they would sort it all out the following Monday. This clue here shows that she intended to see her father in a couple of days. While the following day didn't seem like she was packing to leave for a bit, it definitely didn't seem like she intended to disappear completely. While we don't truly know what was going through her mind, it didn't seem like she was in trouble for the accident, and her dad seemed to take the news well. So it's hard to imagine that she would want to run away for that reason either. Jumping back to the disappearance, I'm going to explain the details that were at the crash site. A witness of the crash named Faith Westman phoned the police. Then a bus driver named Bush Atwood actually stopped by the crash and asked Maura if she needed help and offered to call the authorities. Looking noticeably shaken up, she replied no, but little did anyone know Atwood's interaction with Maura would be the last known sighting. After Atwood drove home, he called the police anyway. He explained the crash, also explaining that Maura didn't appear to be injured, and police finally arrived at 7:46 p.m. with no sign of Maura. Authorities then searched the area and actually recruited Atwood to search west of the accident. A state trooper and 8 firefighters were also a part of the brief search. And with their efforts, they were still unable to get even a clue as to where Maura may have gone. I did not include this in my notes, although now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like I should have. They all checked, I think, every single direction from the crash site, all except for one. And that, I think, was east of her car. So while they did do a brief search right after she disappeared, that could have been the direction that she was heading if that's what happened, if she did end up walking away from her car. The only thing authorities have to go off at this point were the contents in her car. The officer noted that the car was locked when they first arrived. There were stains all over the car. They assume it was wine, because there was wine behind the driver's seat and a red liquid in a Coke bottle. I also didn't include this in my notes, but I believe that there was also a beer can in there as well. But I don't fully remember, so don't quote me on that. Piecing together what we do know, whatever happened to the alcohol that she had bought? Surely spending $40 at the liquor store gets you more than a bottle of red wine. which, as I read on to my research as well, I think it's believed that she took some of the liquor with her. Aside from the initial search, unfortunately, there have not been any real developments within her case that bring Maura any closer to coming home. The following day at 12:36 p.m., a be on the lookout report was issued for Maura. Unfortunately, her father was working out of state and didn't end up learning about the situation until one of Maura's sisters called him at 5 p.m. And she was finally referred to as missing at 5:17 p.m. On February 11th, search dogs tracked her scent, but only so far. The scent was lost about 100 yards away, and this suggested to the police that she may have been picked up by someone. By the time the information was released to the public via press conference, the police listed her as endangered and possibly suicidal, even though the bus driver stated that she did not seem intoxicated when he spoke to her. I also want to mention that the family I don't think was a very big fan of how the police handled the investigation, and Maura's father in 2010 had publicly criticized that they were still treating the investigation as a missing persons case rather than a criminal investigation. I also want to add a little something that I learned while I was researching for this case. I actually found it fairly interesting. I want to make it clear that this isn't confirmed facts. It's just something I found while researching that I do want to share. In 2004, allegedly, someone gave Maura's father a knife said to be the murder weapon. It belonged to the man's brother who lived less than a mile from the crash site. The man told him that after the disappearance, his brother and his girlfriend had been acting strangely, and they got rid of their car. The family of the man did later come out and say that he made up the story to earn reward money, and he had a history of drug use. But later, in 2006, allegedly, at the area where the brother supposedly lived, cadaver dogs went crazy. I mention this because in 2019, Maura's father stated that he does believe Maura is dead, and that is where her remains are. He stated, quote, "That's my daughter, I do believe," end quote. Eventually, due to new ownership, they were allowed to excavate the property, but nothing was ever found. So once again, another dead end. I do have an extra note here as well, and it's that her sister Julie mentioned, actually fairly recently, I'm talking like 2025, that they got a hold of nearby hotel and motel registration cards near her last known sighting, and they contacted who they could, but she mentioned this did not lead to any significant developments. I now want to jump into some theories. I'm covering as many theories as I possibly can, any that I've seen. Some may sound more ridiculous than others, but I will also be sure to mention whether I lean more into the theory or whether I don't. The first theory I want to talk about is that some believe that she just wandered into the woods and died from exposure. Some people believe this because she had alcohol in the car, it was winter, and she may have tried to avoid the police after the crash. I personally don't know if I really believe this theory. Some people point out that because there have been no remains found that this could be the case, but I actually think the opposite. I think if this happened, I feel like remains would have been found by now. Another theory is that some people point out that the bus driver may have been involved. Since he was the last person to see her, it's automatically something people assume. Whether he saw more than he's letting on, or that he actually had something to do with what happened, I'll be honest, I don't really buy into this theory. I don't think that he would have called the police right when he got home. And coming directly from Maura's sister Julie, she has stated that she does not believe that he was involved at all. This next one, I don't think it's really a theory, but I think it's an interesting thing to add. It's that the theory that her car didn't crash at all. There are two witnesses that say her car was just parked on the side of the road. And if this is the case, it raises even more questions. Why did she pull over? Why did two people report an accident? Also, why do the police reports say that her car was stuck if it clearly wasn't? So it definitely does make me wonder a little bit more. Because if we're going off of that, it would technically mean that the police report is wrong. So it's just a little bit more difficult for me to believe this, but I think it is important to note as well. Another theory suggests that she was meeting someone. This theory can be explained because she had made phone calls prior to her disappearance, and she was looking up different places for lodging in the area. However, it's important to mention there's no evidence to confirm that a meeting took place. In some ways, I could definitely see this being a possibility. I'm still not entirely sure, though, because I feel like this leans into the theory that she purposely disappeared, and her family has 100% come out and said that they don't think that that's the case, and her family knows Maura best, so I am inclined to believe her family. And the last theory that I want to touch on is probably the most popular theory, and the one I tend to lean towards as well. The theory is there was foul play at the crash, either an abduction or a homicide. This is actually the theory that her family firmly believes. On Maura's sister's Julie's podcast titled Media Pressure, she stated, quote, "Until we find Maura, it's hard to say what happened. However, I will say the overwhelming consensus within my family is she was met with foul play at the hands of someone." End quote. Maura has been missing for 22 years and 4 days as of this recording. I actually didn't realize until I was looking into this case that the anniversary was only a few days ago, and it honestly feels very fitting to be talking about this again. She still hasn't been found, and her family is still looking for answers. Maura's family run an active website detailing her disappearance, and it includes information about her and the many accomplishments she had in her short life before her disappearance. Her sister Julie also runs a TikTok account, posting updates and information regarding Maura's case. Her sister also hosts a podcast called Media Pressure that details previously unknown facts about the case. I will leave everything linked in the description. Maura Murray was loved, had a bright and exciting future ahead of her, but unfortunately, one fateful night, she vanished, leaving nothing but unanswered questions about what may have happened. Her family is still actively looking for her and continues to wait for that phone call that will hopefully come soon. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you like what you heard, you can follow A Little Bit Cursed wherever you get your podcasts. And my socials are also at A Little Bit Cursed if you'd like to follow me there as well. Until next time, I hope you have an amazing day. And until next time, good morning, good evening, and good night. 20 points for whoever can tell me what that's from. Anyways, have a great day.